Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to another Wednesday, another episode of Heavy Metallurgy Album Club. We have a full docket tonight. Everybody that was lost last week has returned. Kellen and Jim, welcome back to the Days of Thunder. That's coming next week.
Cool it, Marty.
I'm so excited. I just wanted to say, okay, that's it. Good night, and get on with the next one. Anyway, how are y'all doing this evening? It's good to see you.
What's up?
Doing all right.
Jim, you're muted.
Old man, dude. It's what
Technology and the elderly. It's a tough. It's
Yeah,
a tough.
that's right. It's horrible. It's horrible. I get called out at work about 3 times a day with that shit.
You struggle with that mute button, like, it's terrible.
I do.
It's good to see everybody in the chat again tonight. A lot of regular common faces. Good to see you, and a couple new ones too. And good to see you. Thank you for joining us. This little Wednesday experiment is starting to take on legs of its own, which is cool. So, but anyway, we're here for a specific purpose tonight. We're talking about can't remember the name of the album.
Third Eye Function.
Third Eye Function by Theory and Practice. And Theory and Practice is a Swedish technical death metal band, which also borrows from progressive metal, which that's a Wikipedia thing. And I don't hear a lot of progressive on here unless you want to call it, goofy time signatures. But after a year of rehearsal and gigs, they recorded the Submissive demo at Abyss Studio and 3 full-length albums after that. In December 2002, the band went on hiatus and began recording again in February 2003. They're still active, and over the course of their career, they have released 1 demo, 3 full-length albums, 1 single, and 1 EP is most recent in 2017. So they're not the most prolific band. It's funny how they say they went on hiatus and it was only for a year. I mean, that's not much of a hiatus, but anyway, Theory and Practice. This is Ben's pick, and it's going to be interesting to hear what everybody thinks about this. We'll start off with TJ, since we had a little 1 a.m. conversation the other night. What is your thoughts on your initial first impression? What'd you think?
Why you always gotta make me go first when I don't like everything as much as everybody else does?
Because that's where I thought we'd start off with some negative Nancy, and then we'll go into.
Is that how we're gonna do it?
Yeah, that's how we'll do it.
Let me roll in, and everybody can come in and be like, "No, he's stupid.
That guy's dumb.
He's dummy." But all right. So to be honest, my first impression, my first impression. So I've kind of found the record kind of boring. Yes, it's technical. They're super talented. I mean, that's like right out of the gate. The syncopated riffing and stuff is just like, okay, it's more math than I care to do in a song. But it didn't, to me, it felt like they just weren't really doing a lot with it. You get into the Spanish guitar stuff and it all seems a little predictable. And I was just I was a little underwhelmed by it. I don't, again, we get farther into it. I just, my first impressions initially, it's just kind of, I wasn't all that taken with it. So that's just kind of where I'm at with first impressions. So anyway, moving along.
Jim. That's out of the way.
Yeah. Hey, Brian, no boomers, Gen X, man. Gen X, get it right.
We're all Gen X here. Except for Kellen and Ben. Ben are both. They're both Gen X too, I think.
Nope.
All right, let's see. Okay, so first impressions. I went into this blind. I didn't know what I was getting into at all. Definitely, like it was taken, aback by the musicianship, and there's just a lot of variety in their choices. But it doesn't come across as too mishmash. I do hear like a little bit of proto gent in there every once in a while, which that piece I wasn't too much of a fan of. But I mean, Destroy, Erase, Improve had been out for a couple of years, so I can kind of see, some of that maybe kind of pushing into their sound a little bit. Though I do like that album because it's just it's only a Meshuggah album I like. But I that's kind of kept to a minimum. So, other than that one little, kind of a ding there, the more I listened to it, the more I uncovered,
It's a grower. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a grower. This is the definition of a grower. If technical death metal isn't your thing, really, like TJ was saying, syncopated rhythms here. There's a lot of odd time signatures and stuff. If that's not your thing, let this one kind of brew for a little while. I would suggest, because it starts to pay off. After a few listens, there's a lot going on here, and there's some really cool, just balls of all true metal moments on this record that started to like kind of punch their way through to the top for me. So, yeah, first impressions. A grower, it's worth the investment.
Kellen.
I'll kind of just follow up there. Yeah, the first song I heard, that odd sort of syncopation between like a very rigid kind of riff style, and that's an odd place to put the snare drum kind of impression. I did not know when I saw technical death metal from like 97, technical death metal from like 97 to 2004 is 100% my thing. Like I love that. I like that. So when I saw this pick, I was really excited. The first sort of riff to drum play between the two of them, I was kind of thrown. I did not expect that. But by the time we'll kind of get to it later, but by the time I got like halfway through this record, that initial sort of gent impression had started to sort of dissipate. I was intrigued. So by third, fourth, fifth listen, I was a little bit more on board. But in the first like 30 seconds of this record, I was kind of concerned as to where it was going to take me. So
Yeah.
All right, Ben.
Well, it's hard to remember my first time listening to this. I can't even remember how I found out about this band. It might have been Napster in like 99 or something like that I found it and ordered it on eBay. Back then I just fucking downloaded as much music as I could and bought as many CDs as I could on eBay. And this just kind of fell into my lap, I guess. And I loved it. I've always loved it over the years, and I maybe go back to it every other year or so and go, man, this fucking rules. But it's like, I remembered this the other day, and I was like, man, it's been a long time for this thing. And it just kind of sat there on my desk, and I never got around to listening to it. So that's why I picked it, to kind of make myself like really give it a kind of a fresh, clean slate, and remember why I liked it, and kind of give it a more focused look at it. That's really been an enjoyable thing about being a part of the Heavy Metallurgy album club, is like really honing my attention span and really focusing in on a certain album rather than just like blowing across everything that comes through my Bandcamp feed and stuff. Anyways, definitely some Meshuggah adjacent appeal there for me. And I definitely was impressed with Destroy, Erase, Improve when I was this age. So that was probably like the first hook for me. But that comparison kind of fades after a while, and you really start to see the intricacies of how they interplay between the rhythms of the guitars and drums, which really is just like a majority of the personality of the band and the album. But I've loved the sweepy leads and Yngwie Malmsteen guitar work going on. I think that's kind of a weird way to elevate, I guess, the chunkiness and the kind of ham-fisted dumbness of the kind of stupid rhythms. So it kind of adds a little bit of a class to it, and it kind of makes me kind of rethink the whole thing compositionally. And that's, I think, where I kind of finally go, you know what? This is a really good record. So it's been fun digging back into it. I've been listening to nothing but this for like the past 4 days, trying to figure out like something more eloquent to say about it. So it's just going to come out if it does.
Right on. All right, for me, first listen. Oh boy, here we go. Meshuggah. This is my first thought. Here we go. And I, like Tyler, I think, Tyler Dixon said, I'm kind of surprised Ben would pick this. I was a little bit surprised as to it. I was surprised that this one ended up on his wheelhouse. But anyway, having to do my due diligence, of course, I spent more time with it. But my first impression was talented, of course. little atypical songwriting stuff going on. The Meshuggah influence is taking from their early career. When if you listen to early Meshuggah, the vocalist was more of a kind of a hardcore shouting style. The guy in Theory and Practice is a little bit more brutal, not super brutal. You can still kind of tell what he's saying, but he's got, I think, a better voice than whoever was singing for Meshuggah at that point. Yeah, it was one of those deals that, like Kellen, it took multiple listens to, but about third, fourth listen, it like, oh, okay. I started to really get familiar with the songs, and it is the heavy metallurgy thing, because typically I would have given this album one song, maybe half a song, before I went, not for me. Because this isn't something that I ever listen to. This is not a style of death metal. I mean, even like Old Atheist, which I would also maybe say there's a little bit in there that I think Atheist was a little bit more proggy, like on their second album, than this is. But it's good. It's good, and it was a grower. But let's talk about this for a second. Is there a threshold where technicality compromises sincerity or artistic integrity for you? Also, is there a point where art becomes sport in the pursuit of wandering? Which is
wanking, wankery.
Yeah.
Well, it says wandering, but you know.
Yeah,
I copied it exactly off your email, but
autocorrect on the toilet. It was supposed to be wankery.
Wandering. Yeah. Okay. TJ, your thoughts on this? Is there a threshold where technicality compromises sincerity or artistic integrity?
I mean, I think definitely that you can make a case that it does for some artists, for some bands, where they're pushing so hard to just be like, look at all the scales I know. I just played them all in the first song. Where they're just, there's no attention to detail beyond the skill set. There's no passion, there's no emotion. It's just purely by the numbers. Here's all the theory I learned in GIT. Here's all the and it's like, sure, there's always going to be something to be said for that, because it's like not everybody that plays can play on those levels, so you can never take that away from somebody. But when you're out trying to create music and stuff, it's like, and sure, I don't know, can you always say that that's their intent either? It's like maybe, but I just, to me, sometimes the band, the music, it loses something when it's just like, like with Malmsteen and stuff, and he always comes up in these kind of at least for me, when it comes up with this kind of stuff, because like you go back to Rising Force and all that mess, and we were all so blown away by it, and it was just, oh my God, listen to this guy, this neoclassical metal thing that he's doing, and we were all so amazed by it then. But I listened to it today, and it's like that stuff is just so absolutely boring and uninspired, and it's just him going through the motions, for 35 minutes, 45 minutes, just, it's me on my Stratocaster playing the scalloped frets, and I'm doing my diminished fifths, and and in my Philly shirt, and then it's just it's like, it's weak. It's so just absolutely gross, and so I think you can make a good argument that you do sacrifice some of that stuff. And then the other part of the question was the wankery. What?
Is there a point where art becomes sport in the pursuit of wankery? Wankering.
Well, I mean,
he's got wandering. But
yeah, I know. Autocorrect on the crapper is, it happens.
There's nothing really that artistic about jacking off. It's pretty self-explanatory. Anyway, go ahead.
Speak for yourself, Marty.
Demonetized. But
we're past the 2-minute mark. We're good.
Oh, okay. I'm over here trying to behave myself.
Here we go. This from the guy who likes Johnny Touch.
Whatever. I liked one record. Whatever.
They probably have one. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, you're right. They probably only had the one. What can I say? There's no accounting for taste. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. Wankering's. I didn't get into kind of the same point to the first part of it. Yeah, and Alan's right. If you can't write a good song, and that's for me, it always comes back to that. It's like a good song. It's like because some of the guys that are just absolutely beyond madness skilled, just so absolutely insane players, but they come out and they pay attention to the songs that they write, and the composition is so excellent, and they deliver such well crafted songs that their talent doesn't get in the way of it. Like you look like at the Annihilator stuff when we were talking, we look at, it's like Jeff Waters is such a criminally underrated guitar player, even though maybe I've never been crazy about the band, but his skill shines in everything he does. But the songs still, he focuses on that. I feel like even though for me, I did make some cracks about generic and whatever, but it's still, you can still see that he's trying to deliver good songs. And then when he in his leads, I mean, there is so much salt and pepper on those guitar leads. I mean, really, for that stuff was like the highlight of that record for me, because it's like every single one of those solos was just like its own thing. And so in that, you can escape that kind of trap as a player and move past that and really deliver on that without getting, it's like, I read all the books, I can play all the scales, and that a lot of guys do. So, if any of that made any sense, I was rambling a lot. So, anyway.
Nailed it. All right, Kellen, you're next.
So I guess the first part of the question is there a threshold for technicality? Yes. If you were to ask me to define it, though, that would be incredible. I don't know what the tipping point is.
You just know it when you hear it.
Right. Like I can't explain as to why some bands I absolutely enjoy their technical pursuits, why others I can't bother for a moment. Right. So asking me to define the threshold, I think, would be incredibly challenging. It'd be full of contradictions, littered with arbitrary nuance, right? Like, so I had a hard time talking about or thinking about that in terms of if Ben were to sort of press me as like, what's a band that you can't listen to and why, and then hold up one that would be equally sort of within the same category.
Well, Portal's a prime example for me. Portal.
Sure.
I mean, the Ion record is a train wreck. A train wreck. And it's not fun to listen to because the songs. Anyway, go ahead.
Okay. So
Kellen, music is hard.
This is so true. So then I guess to follow up with that, like, does it, I would say, I remember when you had the Prague episode and Hunter and Jeff were on talking about their Prague.
Yep.
I thought I don't know if it was Hunter made this point or Jeff, but I thought that because I presented them with like, where does sort of whatever, to Ben's point about wankery and Prague, like what's the dividing line for you? And I thought they had an incredibly articulate answer, which was, or basically when musicians can play as a collective versus individuals sort of presenting their scales, right? Like good bands who are technical know how, in a meaningful way, how to interact and feed off of one another. Like there's a sense of relationship within a band that is technically proficient. Like, for example, Magma, right? Like Prague band, super out there, wild stuff. But like when I sign up to listen to that band, I know what I'm getting and I enjoy it. Are there other Prague bands that I wouldn't like? Absolutely. But more importantly, what separates them from something, I think my example was like Shrapnel Records, that kind of like shreddy stuff. Yeah. I think that's what we're sort of pointing at when we talk about wankery, which is like a single individual just presenting their skills without any sort of meaningful way to interacting with bandmates, right?
Yeah.
Then the third part of it that was sport. And the reason I thought that was a really interesting way to phrase it, because I remember when technical death metal reached sort of this, I don't want to call it like a point in the mid 2000s. And it was really the advent of YouTube, in my experience, which came around, I think YouTube's came around 2004. Yeah. And I remember watching like the fastest drummer alive when they would just, I think it was Tim Young from Hate Eternal, like got on and just like played a whatever kicks as fast as he could. Death metal drumming in particular had reached this point of like, why are we here? Like, is nothing to do with a band or a record or anything. It's just here for like athletic presentation. And so your choice of sport I thought was interesting because it within technical death metal in particular, it can often feel like that. And that kind of sort of vapid musicianship ended up, I think, sort of pushing death metal in the opposite direction, which is kind of what we're living with right now. So I thought it was an insightful way to phrase that question.
And the sport connotation is also, I mean, I think of like football. What is part of football? Yeah, there's athleticism, there's physicality, and you score a touchdown. There's the showboating, the spiking the ball, the dancing around. I mean, there's a level of all those things in super techie, flashy music. I mean, the celebration, the super. Look at all the scales. I didn't have a girlfriend. I didn't have a life. I played 8 hours a day practicing my sweep picks. Shit like that. I mean, so that's the sport aspect of that question is a good comparison. But were you finished, Kellen? I'm sorry.
I'm good.
Okay.
Yeah, you can let me go.
Jim.
Yeah, I do think as the guy wearing the Venom shirt tonight, I do think that technicality can start to erode someone's vision of the songs especially if they have a wide range of tastes on their instrument. You know what I mean? They're listening to, they like metal, but they're listening to like a lot of world music or I don't know, bluegrass or something. They might want to start putting that in there and showing off like all these hours that I'm spending away. And I actually, the first band I was in, I was with a guy who literally did that. Like his dad tried to get him get better grades by locking him in his bedroom and forcing him to do homework. Well, he just played guitar all night long, and so he became a really, really badass guitar player. But it got to where he started wanting to shove all these different influences in because we started out with metal, but then he wanted to he got into funk and blues, and then he wanted to push all that into there, and then like the songs I think at first it was kind of cool because it was like 24/7 Spies. I don't know if you guys have heard of those guys or whatever.
Yeah.
Kind of like that band.
Oh yeah.
But then it started to, it really just became about just showing off the chops, and the metal started to disappear. Yeah. So for somebody like me, that that was the line for me. It was like when you start kind of getting away. I mean that's cool if you want to abandon metal and then it's not your thing anymore, or then I say it probably never was. And you were that was just your stepping stone. But, if that's your direction, that's cool. That's kind of where I kind of like lose it, when bands start to like leave the metal behind because they're like, well, hey, wait a minute, man, I listen to a lot of jazz. Let me show you that, and the music gets, the heaviness gets watered down. But I will say on this album, I don't think they cross that line. I think they walk right up to it. There's a lot of incredible musicianship going on here. But I still feel like there's cohesive songs and they string them together well. But, I know we're talking more on the generalized topic here, so I'll kind of go back to that. But, I do feel that, Jack in the comments, Jack is mentioning like, there's, and I agree. You spend so much time, there's a lot of dedication there that means that. But I think that it does come to a point, at least in my experience with some of the musicians that I played with, that where the instrument becomes more important than the song. The scales that you can pull off cleanly, the Phrygian mode that you can solo in without fail. Achieving that level of accomplishment, working through instructions, it begins to outweigh your even your desire to like understand what creating a good song is. I do think there's a point where you can kind of like get there, but there are some people like the guys in theory and practice, and I'll say atheist and latter era death, that are somehow able to like mix that thirst for more technical proficiency with memorable, entertaining songs, and I think that those musicians are, tend to be some of my favorite to listen to, the guys that can kind of like get it right there, at the same time I love Venom.
Oh yeah.
So
you got to have some knuckle dragging to counter
you got
offset
it's, hey, there's, the world has a lot of variety, and I like all variety, but yeah, while I do think it's there, and I do think that most musicians that cross the line, I think what ends up happening is they're a guitar player, they're less about being in a band, but I do think people can walk right up to that and still be both. Everybody's different, so luckily we don't have to choose or select, but I do think, just like with anything, you can have too much of any good thing.
Yeah.
Ben.
Great question.
Yeah.
I don't have an easy answer for this, but I thought it was a generative conversation. I think you can approach a certain band or pursue a certain kind of music wanting something out of it. Sometimes I want to hear something soulful and honest and candid, and that's when I reach for something like Panopticon or Falls of Raros or something like that. That's sincere. And then sometimes I just want my face shredded off, and that's when I reach for something like this. Like Cynic is another example. Like, that's some really heartfelt, I think, music that is insanely technical. And I think, like, there's people on YouTube, they're showing how they can shred. And I think those are like, that's an artist like offering you a tool or kind of showing you a trick so that you can add that to your tool belt and potentially write something interesting. But right, it's an artist's choice just to decide, do I want to do something that means something to me? Do I want to tell a story that is something I've been through? Or I just want to show how well I can jack off on my guitar? I mean, it's all a valid art, and it's up to us to decide what we want out of it here and there. The idea of like sport, this idea came to me when my mom used to watch a lot of American Idol, and I just thought, like, that's just taking everything that I want out of music and just putting it on a scoreboard and rating people on their technical capabilities.
It's the worst.
Fucking boring shit.
It's the worst.
Like, my mom would just sit there and be like, wow, that was fucking great. And I would just think, like, what if you actually liked some real music? That might blow your mind. But these guys here, I think TJ, you made a great point. Like, songwriting capability is where you can incorporate and fold those skills into your tool belt to write something that is genuine or sincere or just honest. That's a great way to put that.
Yeah. And for me, to summarize, I wrote a little note here as everybody was talking. Technicality is a tool. How you use it is paramount to good songcraft. And there's some bands that get it wrong, and they approach it as a sport, like show off how look at me. But over the year, what's that?
Nothing.
Oh,
I burp.
Oh, okay. Over the years, I mean, bands like Corner, Death Row, Watchtower, Vector. There's been others that take technicality to kind of the 10th degree, but they still write good songs within it. Songs with meaning and power and movement and hooks. And I'm going to swing it back around to theory and practice. I mean, everybody's talking about how techie this is, but if you really listen to this record, they're kind of being deceptive, because I think this album is more technical in the rhythm section. It's rhythmically technical. If you listen to what the guitars are doing over the top of the drums, there's just a lot of kind of boring crunching. I'm sorry, and it's like you've got a drummer that is kind of pushing the boundaries of the musicians. I mean, they're still playing some killer riffs on occasion. When they get there, it's nice. It's a nice break, but it's just a lot of, you got to go through a lot of, B or C or D, whatever they're tuned to, crunching and, following along with the rhythm. And the time changes and the rhythm choices are is the true technical prowess of this band. So does a band like this sit with Corner, Death Row, Watchtower? I don't think they do. I think they're kind of like entry level to that realm, but I mean, it's still a good record. I think there's some good songs here. I think they mix it up as the album moves on. I think it gets better. But yeah, I don't know if I answered the questions here, but I'm basically agreeing with. I mean, that's one nice thing about being the cleanup crew here. It's I mean, I hear a lot of good comments, and a lot of which I would have also said. But let's talk about the musicality and composition of I didn't write the name of this album down.
Third Eye Function.
Third Eye Function. Yeah. By the way, I just wanted to say that Ben picked the end boss of crappy 90s computer generated artwork. Just saying. It's someone just got the first version of Corel Draw or Photoshop and like, look, I made a swirl in this picture. Ooh, aliens. I made them on my computer. Yeah.
It's bad.
It's bad. The original. I can see why they redid it. I mean, the remake cover, the new reissue cover is really boring and whatever, but it's 1,000 times better than the original one. Just saying. But yeah, musicality and yeah.
Oh, me?
Composition. Yeah. Check your list there.
Yeah. Well, you know, I have many things to say.
I like the glasses as emphasis there. That's nice. It's
well,
like
well, I need these to see you guys.
Well, actually, yeah. Go ahead.
Because I don't have bifocals yet. So don't forget, I am not only fat, I am old. And so, you know, these, like I said earlier, it's like these guys are mega talented. It seems like I read something about one of the reasons why they split up or whatever was the guitar player went back to music school or something to pursue his studies.
The rhythm guitar player.
And it shines in this. I mean, the flamenco / Spanish guitar stuff that runs throughout the entirety of the record. I mean, it's flawless. It's great. But like I said, you know, it gets a little tired. You know, it just struck me personally as a little predictable, just kind of like, oh, you know, this kind of stuff. But
hold on a second.
So
Did you listen to the right album? Because I don't remember any flamenco like classical.
Yeah, I mean
there's some of that on there. There's some shitty stuff going on.
Yeah,
I caught the keyboard stuff. I mean, I listened to this album like 6 fucking times. I don't remember any.
The acoustic stuff. All the acoustic stuff is all kind of, you know, Spanish.
Well, you said throughout. I'm just like, I don't know.
Well, it is.
Maybe one or two spots, but not the whole. Anyway, go ahead.
He does what? There's like 3 or 4 different places. Like, you know, well, like one of my favorite tracks in the record is one of those. And anyway, but yeah, again, it just, you know, the songwriting just seems a little just kind of by the numbers to me. I don't. Marty listened to the wrong. Yeah,
it happens.
But you know, and then again, you know, the syncopated riffing and stuff. And it was funny because when Marty texted me like 1 o'clock this morning about it, and he's like, "Oh, I'm really liking this," you know, and then I made my comments about the, you know, the chugga chugga and stuff, and he's like, "Oh, well, you know, it kind of reminds me of early Meshuggah," you know, and I was like, "Oh, you know, I hadn't listened to that record in such a long time." I was like, "Oh God, you know what?" I said, "That's." Yeah, you know, the kind of proto gent whatever, and I was like, "That's what a, you know, very astute, you know, comparison. Really, it really does kind of sound that." And Destroy, Erase, Improve is I like that one a lot too myself, Jim. I liked Nothing too, but that's kind of where they lost me right there. But anyway, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, they're talented. And the songs on here are not bad. I just was having a hard time connecting. I will admit, you know, like the rest of you said, there is a growing. You know, I listened to it today before the show. This is probably the 5th time I've listened to it, and I am starting to peel stuff out of it. Like, oh, you know, I kind of miss this, and because I tend to listen to a lot of stuff while I'm on the road at work and stuff, and I was, you know, and this last week I was having a little bit of trouble really getting down to have time to just kind of drive and listen. And I'm pulling more stuff out. I picked out like there's that Astral, what is it? Astral Eyes.
Yeah.
I think the song. So, they do a really killer time shift at like about 2.5 minutes in. It's really slick. This kind of the whole timing shifts and everything, and I was like, shit, I didn't even notice this before. It was really good. So musicality on this, but what can I say? They're talented. It's really great. The songs aren't bad, but it's just but this is just kind of Jax has to be more adventurous. It's like it does seem to kind of run on one kind of theme all the way through, and it just really didn't connect with me at all. I can't say a bunch of bad crap about it because that would just be dishonest. It is good, but just for me, it just kind of was just kind of average really as far as that goes. But again, talented bunch of guys. I got I can't pretend to be as good as that dude. So, and it's got nothing to do with that. I just this particular slab of music wasn't connecting with me. So
All right, Jim.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's absolutely undeniable these guys are talented musicians. Like TJ mentioned, the guy was going to school for it, and it shows. And maybe there is a little bit of wanting to show some of the things that he had learned, with the Spanish, guitar going on here and there. But the thing is, as when it does rear its head, I think it's performed successfongly, and it's interesting. Some of the other ideas I kind of question a little bit, like on the title track, there's bongos in the middle. I'm like, man, I don't know about that.
Well, I said the same thing on the Annihilator. Fuck bongos. There was bongos like a bongo break in the...
It was on Fourth Century.
Oh, Fourth Century. That's
Yeah.
right. Fourth Century. Yeah.
yeah, Anaconda.
Yeah.
Bongos
Anaconda.
need more love.
No, they don't.
Bongo saxophone. Come on.
Well, yeah, Isan does the saxophone thing, and actually, I kind of dig that a little.
You have to wear a fine Norwegian sweater to play saxophone. Apparently.
right. Yeah,
Sharp.
yeah, exactly.
Have a pipe. Maybe have a couple pipes that you smoke while you're drinking a wine.
Yeah.
Nice. No, but I do hear everything that TJ's saying. It's definitely easy to so much technicality can be thrown at you that it gets boring. Like, a great example of that for me is a Dream Theater. Like I love one song by them, and it's Pull Me Under. Like I really love that song. I think it's excellent from start to finish. I love the riffs in it, the singing, the lyrics, everything. But then the rest of that album, because I bought it when it came out, I was like, whoa, I don't like this.
I love that record.
I had so much for that. That was an album that I had high expectations for and just didn't deliver for me, But I mean, that one song I'll always love, and I think it's great and pure metal awesomeness. But I mean, I do think that that's an album that kind of loses me in that one. But where on the other hand, this album, every time I got through it, like I was liking it more, not less, and where I kind of felt, okay, I hear proto gent, okay, there's a lot of progressive death going on here, but as it kept going, I was like, that was a cool, like I'll give it a good example of an idea that I thought was really awesome, and it was on theoretical conviction. And there's this one section in the song, it's about like just shy under 2 minutes in, where the dude's alternate picking on one side of the stereo or whatever really fast. It's just just perfectly executed 16th notes. But then behind that and kind of floating around it, there's really eerie keyboards going on and just crazy, like shred-tastic leads going on. And it's just this weird combination. Perfectly played, just flawless 16th notes, heavy as hell, but weird keyboards and crazy leads. Like, and I just, every time that section of that song came back around, I was like, dude, that is so awesome. And it sounds so unique and so different. And, and see that's what started to happen. I started picking out, these moments, and another song, Worlds Within Worlds, had a very similar kind of effect on me. There's the verse riff in that song has some kind of dissonance going on. I don't know if they're playing triads or something, but whatever it is, like it sounds like, I don't know, it's this weird, like dissonant but melodic at the same time. If you go back and listen to the verse riffs on that song, I think it's track 5, you can hear something just very, very cool. And and that's what this band does. There's just these nuggets of cool little things you just start to pick out. And and that's why I think that, theory and practice, they edge more on the songwriting thing. I mean, because it's not just interesting from like, wow, that was technically awesome. The things I just described were compositional. Like I had this idea and I layered it with this idea. I had this idea and I put it on top, and I had this riff, and that's not a technical riff that, that sounds real evil but melodic at the same time. That is just an interesting riff. And that's what I think when I take a step back, from the composition musicality of this band, what I take from it is not just shred-tastic, though that's there in spades. I take interesting, I take like, what else is there? There's more buried under there, So, and kudos to them for giving an avenue, a kind of a glimpse behind the technical mirror of something more intriguing going on.
Yeah, cool. Kellen.
So I don't have too much to add here. I actually really enjoyed how weird this was at times. Just
if this is about to be a pro bongo speech, you're about to be put in timeout.
Just hear the man out.
Listen.
You don't know I'm a lifelong bongo player.
Yeah,
so
I can see him. I can see him in the corner over there.
You can tell. You can see it.
Seething over here. How dare you?
How dare you, Teach? Yeah. Sorry.
What I'll say is what's interesting also, if you think of like the technical death metal bands that are coming out of Sweden at the time, the two that come to mind for me are Anata and Spawn of Possession, and this sounds nothing like them.
Yeah.
So I thought
Anata is way more technical, I would say.
Oh yeah.
The technical aspect of this is like that syncopation, whatever gent thing that we've talked about at length, but it's sort of how they will tie a knot. And then what was interesting to me, I think Jack mentioned earlier in the comments, like it transitions into these individual thought patterns, kind of death moments, like, which to me, listening to the record by the third, fourth time was the major sort of dynamic I got with this record. It was a lot more mid-paced than I initially thought of it.
Yeah.
And it was not super techy. It's just they make some interesting left turns with the flamenco guitars. Yes, they're here, but like even solos.
Maybe on your version.
Okay, but
it's still there. Emblematic of the album.
There's like they'll go through a flamenco, like a flamenco lead, then it'll transition to an electric guitar lead, then they'll have a bass lead, then they'll have a synth lead. There's like a seamless transition in the soloing at times, which I thought was really kind of strange but interesting as well. And I know a couple of the members are multi-instrumentalists, so I don't know if like they're coming from the same musician, but because for me, I absolutely love this era of death metal. Like I potentially have a bit more patience with how quirky it is at times. But like I think Marty alluded to, the initial sort of shock of how odd this is tended to fade. And I found it to be mostly like a mid-paced, semi-technical record that kind of sits in a weird place in Swedish death metal history. So outside of that, I kind of, that super tech thing faded. And it's just kind of an interesting death metal listen for me. So
agreed.
Yeah.
Ben.
I love this album. It's hard to pin me down. There's a lot of like happy accidents about this thing. I know the band said that they don't like the production on the thing. And they said they recorded this in Sunlight Studios, and they said Skogsberg just like wasn't paying attention to anything that they were doing in the studio. They said in the interview that like all they wanted to do was make them sound like a punk and rock and roll band or something, which like what?
Huh.
Dismember, grave, what? I don't know. But it definitely does sound like different than all those other Sunlight Studios albums. And I am addicted to that guitar tone. So I love hearing that Sunlight familiarity in a really different kind of context outside of your grave, dismember, all that kind of stuff. But anyways, I think this album could grow on a lot of people, since I've been listening to this for 20 years. I think I've come to memorize and remember all of the tiny little licks where they transition into interesting little new ideas. And that makes me, at first I think it sells you kind of on any one of their ideas, because it kind of gives you like a nice little smooth segue into their odd parts. But now I remember every single little intricacy, and I look forward to every single little part, and they're stuck in my head over and over and over again. The way that they come out of some of the guitar parts into bass parts, it's just all, it's exactly what I want this album to be, and I wouldn't change a thing about it. I think they're really clever about incorporating a lot of weird time signatures and patterns. It's kind of like what was it, Fourth Century? I was saying like every member is a drummer just kind of beating on their guitars. Well, that's kind of here. They're kind of all being drummers. But like the Peter Lake shreddering solos over this thing is just, it just gets at me. Musicianship, of course, they're insanely talented. I thought it was interesting. They said in an interview that they're pretty much just trying to be Mekong Delta in a death metal format. Mekong Delta is a band I didn't listen to until this week.
Yesterday, wasn't it?
Yeah,
said, I'm gonna go check them out right now.
Yeah. I had heard the name a little bit. I thought maybe they're just like a Loudness or whatever. But they're not. They're a really technical thrash band from Sweden. And when you hear Mekong Delta, it makes sense why Theory and Practice sounds the way they do. It totally makes sense. So the Meshuggah comparison can maybe like fade off once you understand like they're really just trying to like make death metal fans turn their head toward Mekong Delta to fall in love with that stuff. So I've only listened to like maybe 4 songs by Mekong Delta, and it's awesome. I can't wait to listen to more of it. But that I think is important for everybody to realize. Like, okay, sincerity, I'm not looking really for any of that in this album, but I think they're really trying to just have fun with their technical skills, and just kind of take an idea that influenced them a ton and kind of bring that into a new death metal kind of context. So maybe once you guys listen to this album a little bit more, you might fall in love with it some more. And yeah, the Mekong Delta thing really like it clicks, and it's like, oh, okay, I see what they're going for. But I think they're super talented at writing songs.
Right on. Yeah. And again, if I did not take the time for this show to listen to it, I mean, obviously I must have zoned out during the acoustic parts. I'm sure they were there because I did listen to this album a lot, way more than, but I was also doing stuff but anyway, it was a grower album for me. And the songs, I think the album got better as it went. The songs they started incorporating more note-based rhythms, guitar parts as they went. Because there's a lot of crunching. Like I said, they deceive us a bit by making it feel more technical because of the odd rhythm choices and time signature shifts and stuff like that. And the guitar syncopation, just the crunch. It's, I guess, the gent thing. I don't know. I'm not a big gent fan, but thankfully I like the guy's voice. He walked a good line between being able to understand him and a level of brutality that really kind of fits well within this music. And for a Swedish death metal band, they don't sound Swedish to me, if that means anything. That they're just kind of a atypical for that part of the globe. But I thought the songs got better as they went once they started. And Jim also mentioned like some weird, like in the background things. There's a couple times on this, listening to it on headphones, where there's like, I don't know if it's just a sound or a keyboard or a guitar line, like in the background. They do some cool things with panning. There's some cool stuff going on, and it really detracts from the formula, which is nice. They do there's some creative flourishes thrown in here, which is really, really nice. This is a band where I would like to hear where they went. I didn't get time to research any of the stuff that came after this. I would imagine it's only better. But the songwriting and the composition, I think, is fine. It progresses. It gets more interesting and intricate as they go into the album. And they finally, on songs like Worlds Within Worlds, they start getting into some faster stuff. It's like a nice, finally, there's that hit of speed and a different vocal cadence and a little more black metal rasp to it. It was a nice, refreshing jolt from, like Kellen said, a very mid-pace, crunchy album. But yeah, let's talk about the production. Jim, we'll start with you.
I think the production is very solid for this era, this album. Where they were, they were sunlight and everything. I think you can hear everything really well. I really especially love the bass sound on this. Sometimes the guy plays with distortion sound. He doesn't. Obviously plays with his fingers, and I think for this kind of technical death metal, this is one area where I think it's better served. With playing with your fingers. I can't really explain it, but I like the way when you're running a lot of scales and you're playing bass this way, there's like a fluid kind of a sound to it.
Yeah.
Though, if it's something just more in your face and just, headbanging, I always prefer bass pick sounds, but not with this style. And one of my favorite moments on the album actually is the title track. Right after the song begins, there's a quick break and he does this distorted bass run. It's distorted, but it's clean. Like you can still hear every note that he's doing, to be able to do that, play with your fingers, takes some skill without it sounding noisy, and it just shows how awesome these guys are. One of my favorite moments on the record. It's really, really cool. So yeah, we had mentioned earlier how bands that, like Meshuggah that may have influenced these guys in a tiny little bit, didn't have the vocal power. I agree. Like I think the guys' vocals are very strong on this record, and have a lot of ups and downs, ins and outs. It's not just some guy barking into the microphone, and I think it gives, which is really cool. I think that, technical, especially more melodic technical death metal like what we have here, is better served with a really harsh vocal. It gives it more of that gravitas here, and this guy, he really provides that, power and push, with his vocal performance. The guitars, love the lead sounds, acoustic sounds. I will say there is one criticism I have here on production. I do think there's a thinness in the rhythm guitar sound a little bit, and maybe I think it was Ben was talking about the interview they had where they kind of felt like maybe the guy wasn't given the full attention. Maybe this is one area where the guy could have been fiddled with the knobs a little bit better. It lacks a little bit of bottom end, which is kind of odd with them having more of the polyrhythmic chunks here and there, but it's a very minor gripe, and it's not like it's ear piercing. It's still a good guitar sound. I just think that it could be better. But aside from that, really, really, really strong production, really good balance between everything. Especially when the keyboards come in, they kind of hide behind the guitars, and sometimes that kind of bugs me. Like I want the keyboards a little bit louder, but what I think they do here is they serve the riff instead of burying the riff, and just add a little more evil there. Especially in that song, I keep mentioning Theoretical Conviction, which obviously is one of my favorites on the album. What the keyboards do in that song, the song wouldn't be the same without them. And I also think the song wouldn't be the same with the choices in, EQ, where they're putting those in the mix, level wise. So great production on this. I think it's better served. It is, an album of its time. The record levels are a lot lower than things you'd hear now, but that's okay. That's, that's what you're kind of looking for that when you hit an album, from like mid to late 90s. But yeah, aside from the guitar tone, it could be spruced up with some low end. I'm very happy, and I think it's a lot of good choices made for this style of death metal.
Okay, Kellen.
Yep, I'm cheating off of Jim's notes here. So I have written that the guitars are a little bit too mid-focused. They don't lack that. They lack the lower mid-range to like upper bass portion of like a death metal guitar that I'm looking for. I mean, you could say that provides a little bit more like space for the rest of the band to be heard, but I just thought for a death metal record, it lacked a little bit of the low end from the rhythm section. The other thing is it's like the snare sound for me sounded a little bit too small. The rest of the kit sounds great, and I love that 90s death metal drum sound, but especially you don't have that like ridiculous kind of brick walled effect that you get in a lot of modern production, which is cool, but I needed a bit more meat on that snare drum. It sounded a little bit too thin for me. So like when you would get these great sort of rolls across the toms and the kicks everything's on point, except that's like disproportionately small on this record. The rest of it, I really don't have any problem with it. I initially, put it on. I thought, oh, great 90s death metal sound. So don't have too much to complain besides that.
All right. TJ.
Yeah, so the guitar tone is terrible. It just sucks. I mean, in the context of the songs and the whole record, it's like, it puts it all together. I think the production overall, were it my bill to pay, I would be happy. I would pay the man. I'd be like, this is, this turned out okay. This is good. I expected it to be different, being a Sunlight Skogsberg thing. I did not expect it to be so kind of just lifeless and I don't know, I expected something different out of it. But it's got clarity. Everything comes through, the stuff that needs to shine shines, but it's just the tonal choices and the palette that he used to craft the record, and engineer the tones and stuff. It's just not really that great. And it's like, Kellen mentioned Nada, which is a band I absolutely love. You listen to that stuff and, it's like, it's kind of night and day production wise difference for sure. So for me, it's like that was one of the things that really kind of killed a lot of it for me, was just that guitar tone. But again, listening to the whole of it, I think I would be pleased with it were it my product. My record, it did, that delivered what they needed it to do. But I definitely would have, it would have been nice where the tone, where the guitar tones had been shaped a little bit more. It just seems a little like, kind of like just meh, this is fine.
There's no body to them. There's no depth.
It's just very just kind of and so it just seems like it was all kind of an afterthought. Like here, this is what you wanted, right? You can hear everything right here. Pay the bill. I got other things to do. It just kind of just feels that way. But that's, do I hate it? No, it just, for me personally, I think it feels like it could have been better. It definitely could have been a lot better than it was.
Ben.
I agree on the snare drum. I hadn't really put that together, but that is a little bit of a mini gripe. It could be more of a kind of sound. I'm kind of surprised that the guitar tone is so annoying to you guys. Think about the Sunlight guitar
You're
tone.
not a guitar player, you're a drummer.
Right. The Sunlight sound is one of the most appealing, like HM2 guitar sounds there is.
It's not on this album, though.
This isn't a very good example of it whatsoever. No. But I really like the crunchiness of the bass. But what I think I love overall, and this goes against like what every musician would want their album to sound like, is that the instruments aren't really mixed or meshed very well and EQ'd very well. It's like drums are here, guitars are here, bass are here, vocals are here. Everything is like separate. And for some reason, when there's music that I can just kind of like really sink my head into and like kind of swim around in the intricacies and the technicality, I kind of like that about it. It makes it like really identifiable and discernible what I'm hearing. And the succinctness to the sound is appealing to me for this kind of thing. I don't know if I would say this about any other album. And I know that like most musicians want the guitars and the bass to kind of play nicely together and live in a sandwich together and on a comfy cloud in the sky. But they don't do any of that here. Do you think they even mix this thing at all?
I have no complaint with the mix. I think the mix is fine.
I mean, it is like you say, everything lives in its space, and you listen to the record and it's all there and it all comes across, but it's just like, did he do anything to it other than mic the amps and flip a couple of tone switches and be like, you can hear it, right? Everything's there, right?
Yeah.
I did my job, right? I mean, it's good. And I would definitely pay the man. I don't feel like they got robbed, but it's just kind of like very lackluster. It's just very kind of just here it is, just whatever.
Well, so okay, a couple more points. So the next album, I think the next 2 albums were recorded in Abyss Studios, which I don't love, but they're not as bad as some of the other Abyss Studios recordings. So if that appeals to you, check that out. And then I wanted to note too, there's Peter Lake has a black metal solo album called Mutant: The Aeonic Majesty, and the riffs on that thing are great. It's like annoying 1999 drum machine kind of black metal, which is and the vocals are but there's some great riffs on that thing, and it's just kind of a beast all its own for late 90s black metal. But yeah, mix wise, it's just a weird thing. It sounds really unartistic of a mix, and for me, it has a shitty appeal to it.
All right. Well, let's look at this. Came out in '97. Let's look at another album that came out in '97. It was also recorded at Sunlight Studios. Death Metal by Dismember. So does Dismember at this point, a very much a veteran artist in Sweden, get precedence in the studio over Theory and Practice, who's putting out their first record? You want to talk about mixing and recording? I listened to the mix of this record, and like everything's in its own lane together. It sounds great. I like where the vocals sit. I like where the bass sits. I like where the guitars and the drums sit. I don't like the guitar sound. I'm going to reiterate that what TJ said. It's thin. It lacks balls. There's a lot of crunching going on, and it's like a thin mid-range tone, or not mid-range. I don't know what the hell it is. It's just when you palm mute a crunch, you want a heft to it.
It's definitely
you want a depth.
It's definitely mid-heavy. It's definitely they living in the mid-range in that guitar tone. They just didn't dial any life into it, and it's definitely you weren't wrong with that analysis.
But when they take it all and mix it all together, maybe there's a reason that the guitar's that. Maybe they had a different sound for it, and it was stepping on other frequencies, and it was easier for the good of the mix going forward to shave off some of the depth, the low end tone. I don't know. I wasn't there, but the end result is what's important to me. And, headphones on, listening to it loudly. I'm focusing on the guitars because I'm a guitar guy. I play guitar. So I'm listening to the guitar tone, and it's just not there for me. But if you listen to the album as a whole, it doesn't detract from the album. The songs are all good. They're all flowing and going in a good direction and get better as the album progresses. So that's a minor complaint, but we are talking about production. But other than that, let's talk about least favorite songs. Kellen, we'll start with you.
All right. Favorites. I'm going to the combination. I thought tracks. So I love the title, by the way, Self-Alteration. But the 4, 5, 6, so Worlds Within Worlds and The Expiring Utopia, that is where the album sort of like turned a page for me. The opening part for Self-Alteration, they kind of go through 3 distinct parts. So you have like the intro piece where it builds, then you get your odd sort of syncopation, sort of knot tying, and then they ramp into the song. So I think that's a great sort of example how they sort of dynamically segment their songwriting. I had the same impression with you, Marty, on Worlds Within Worlds. That's the first song that felt like they sort of shifted into gear and actually were sort of attempting to peel the paint off the wall sort of deal.
Mhm.
And the closing track, I actually really liked Inexplicable Nature.
Yep.
It's a cool one too, and we get some interesting sort of guitar work where like solos, then comes back, then solos, and comes back and fades out. So those are my favorite tracks. Least favorite, so the synth here, I agree with Jim in terms of the moment in Theoretical Conviction when the synths sort of come in and this giant dramatic like crazy solo and giant synths yelling. But the third track, Astral Eyes, I never really completely warmed up to that one.
It's a very it's a very simplistic synth line.
Yeah, the synth
it grows into chords, which makes it's a nice touch. But
it's like I can understand that this is one of Ben's favorite tracks because it's one of the like interesting ones. Like that's an odd choice. Okay, well, but that one I just kind of felt out of sorts for me. Like they're trying new ideas, something you would do on a first record, but they haven't necessarily mastered that. But it was intriguing, but I kind of like, tilt your head like a dog watching a can opener sort of deal. Like what's going on? Like I kind of had that impression.
Yep.
Yeah.
You good?
I'm good.
All right, Jim. Favorites, least favorites.
Yeah, definitely. As I was kind of alluding to, Worlds Within Worlds. That song is just awesome. That's when the tide really started to turn for me listening to the record. Because at first I was like, okay, I hear what's going on here, and it's okay. But that song, just kind of like, wait a minute, there's a whole other level to what these guys are doing, and kind of forced me to kind of perk up a little and pay more attention. And then a couple songs later, Theoretical Conviction, which we've already talked about. Just really cool, interesting ideas. The way the interplay between the keys and the guitars, and both the rhythm and lead is really, really something there to check out. I gotta say, the I have to agree with Kellen. Astral Eyes is kind of my least favorite because of that strange synth thing going on in the beginning. Like that one, instead of eerie, it just sounds really bizarre. You know what I mean? Almost comical in a way. I don't know if that's intentional or not, but I will say that the more I listen to the record, even that song, I found some really cool things in. Like there's a right past like the initial riff and the verses, like kind of like the bridge or something. There's a really cool riff right there, and I kind of found myself as the record would start over, waiting for that riff to appear. So even Astral Eyes has something to offer. So that, I think that's saying a lot, to the strength of the record, musically. That all 9 songs, there was nothing that I felt like I had to get past or suffer through. Even though Astral Eyes, definitely some goofiness there. But after a while, like it just kind of became part of what we're all saying here. Theory in practice isn't just a technical death metal band or progressive or whatever. They're just a strange death metal band. You know what I mean? And so as you dig deeper into the record, moments like that on Astral Eyes don't come across as so bizarre anymore. They just sort of kind of just fits in with the aesthetic that they're pushing forward, which is like, we're just weird, man. we can really shred, but we make some strange choices, but they're interesting, they're intriguing, and they bring it back. Definitely for me, Worlds Within Worlds, Theoretical Conviction, that's 5 and 7 for anybody who just wants to go by the tracks. I highly recommend those. And the title track is no slouch either. That one's a good, that just slightly out of the top 2 for me. So good stuff.
Right on. TJ, I see you checking out your notes, so we're gonna put you up next.
So I like the Theoretical Conviction and Void of Origin and Inexplicable Nature. I like how Void of Origin and Inexplicable Nature, for me, it was like, it just, those two songs felt the best fleshed out to me in the way the one worked into the next one, because they kind of borrow from it, and the Void of Origin and then Inexplicable Nature kind of borrows from the acoustic stuff and the previous track. And it just the songs, I just really enjoyed them much more overall. And then I thought Theoretical Conviction was, it felt like a bit of a ripper. It was cool. I liked it a lot. And then I mentioned earlier that song Astral Eyes. You get it about 2:38, 2:40 in, and they do this really, really awesome timing shift, where it almost feels like they move through like 3 separate tempos before they get settle on where the song's going to land.
Yeah.
And it's really cool. It was because I hadn't picked it out the first few spins, and I was sitting here tonight and I was like, I backed it up and listened to it a couple. I was like, wow, that's really sick. And yeah, but definitely those. And then my least favorite song's the opening track. And it's because I just don't feel like that opening I think it was, they're trying to bring the powerful, syncopated, just single
it's their
note.
most Meshuggah sounding song is that one.
Right. And I don't think it's indicative of what the whole record is. And so it kind of, it's misleading. Like you said, Marty, earlier, like, had you not been doing this for the club, you would have listened to the first song and been like, and then moved on.
Yeah.
And
totally.
so I feel like it kind of misrepresents, I think the songs, and I mean, I feel like from front to back, this is their first record.
Their first
is that
one,
right? Yeah. It's the composition and stuff on this record is very mature. It's very, these guys again, always going to talented. And so their ideas, they're fleshing this all out from front to back, and it all, it doesn't flounder, it doesn't go all over the place. Like, yeah, some of the feel, it's like you got the Meshuggah thing, the syncopated stuff, the individual thought patterns, death stuff is definitely all over this, but it's still, they make their point in these songs. And I just feel like my favorites, that's where they were really kind of spinning it up right at that, obviously it's, near the end of the record, but I felt like they brought their ideas across the best on those tracks. So anyway, there's my, yeah.
All right. Ben.
Well, so I've always kind of wished that the first 4 songs would have been like an EP, and then that the last half of the album would have had maybe a couple more added to it, and that was the album.
Yeah.
The first 4 songs were what they recorded the demo as, and got the record deal with the demo. So of course they were like, well, we better record these songs and then add some more cool newer stuff to it. And so there's definitely like a bookmark in the middle of the album where it's like, whoa, they really improved.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not front loaded. But like, it definitely is. I don't know. I would say maybe it works well to kind of introduce you to their weirdness and their ideas, so that when the other half of the album comes along, you're kind of ready and more familiar with the even more down that rabbit hole that you're going to go. But I think it kind of plays well through as an album, fairly well. There's definitely a lull in Astral Eyes where they play on that same riff way too much. And that is the absolute low point for the album for me. I think in my 20s or so, I probably loved this song the most because of the stupid keyboard intro. And
I like it.
But like, I've grown past that. Like, that song is kind of a dud, but whatever. Like, I wouldn't take anything off of this album, of course. So Astral Eyes, I'm gonna say not my favorite song. Maybe the last song. It's like the longest song on the album, 6 minutes and 16 seconds. And it kind of makes me wish they would have gone into maybe some like 8-minute territory or so. I think they could really do that. So next, I'm gonna definitely listen to their second and third album after this. And I'm remembering this right. I want to say, yeah, Colonizing the Sun has a Sparks cover on it. Anybody here familiar with Sparks?
They're that weird pop band, right?
Yes,
Weirdo avant-garde pop band.
they
A lot
do.
of
They
people
sound,
claim that they're influenced by, but yeah, they never took off. Right.
no, they're huge. They have
Are
like
they?
29 albums.
29 albums? Wow.
And, yeah, Sparks did one of the most incredible things I've ever heard of. They played in one venue in London for 30 days straight, and they played every single album in their discography each night.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
Oh, geez.
30 albums in a row.
Wow.
Fucking unbelievable.
Yeah.
Anyways, so yeah, the last song was probably my favorite.
All right. Well, for me, I'm going to start with Astralize because that's song number 3 on the album, and that's where things start to perk up a bit for me. It starts off with that odd, simplistic synth line, kind of weird sounding, but it makes just it's already a break from the it's like okay, and that synth line progresses into more of an organic synth line that sits perfectly behind the guitars, but the synths offer a much needed musical counterpoint to break up the formula of heavy crunch and the varying tempo changes. My favorite song is Worlds Within Worlds. I love the faster, more note dominant riff attack with a black metal tinge higher register scream for effect. It builds much needed energy and aggression. Solo work is very proficient as well. Theoretical conviction, all I wrote for that was faster is better. And where the faster songs hit on this album is where it's much needed because it's a very mid-paced album. What the hell's the name of the song? I can't read my own writing. The extirping Utopia.
Expiring.
Okay. Extirping? No.
Expiring.
Extirping. I don't even know what the hell that word is. I didn't.
Yeah,
that wasn't in
yeah.
my dictionary.
Yeah, YouTube and stuff has it spelled very strange with that T in it, but on Metallum they got it right. It's just expiring.
Oh, okay.
But
I saw it on YouTube Music. Yeah,
I saw the same thing on YouTube too. It had the T in there.
I put on here for this one interesting background sounds and guitar lines. Adds texture. I wish they did this more, which they do it a bit on this album. But I like that weird when you're listening to it in headphones. Weird shit going on in the background. It adds a creep to it, which is cool. My least favorite is the first couple songs on the album, Submissive, Third Eye Function. They're both good and solid songs, but seem less interesting with that relying on that crunch. Very more old Meshuggah sounding. Self-aspiration, a lot of crunch before more exciting riffs enter the picture. They always start off with the crunch, and the song always develops into something more note-based and interesting as it goes. But yeah, that's the breakdown for me, but it leaves us with judgment, final thoughts. TJ.
Final thought?
Yep.
C plus.
Right on.
There. C plus, man. It's a cool record. And you know,
that's all I'm gonna get from TJ tonight.
Yeah. I don't really there ain't really much more I can say about it. I mean, I didn't fall in love with it. I don't hate it. I'm definitely gonna check out some of the other stuff. I'd be curious to see. And my guy, like Mekong Delta, it's like I heard one of their records back in '87 or something. And I remember not being too impressed with it back then, but back then all I was listening to was Blood Feast, so I mean, I don't know. So
Creator.
yeah, but a C plus. Yeah.
All right.
Were you and Marty friends back that far?
Not quite. Well, no, not that far back. We
saw him in school before, yeah, and then we thought he was a poser.
Were we?
But I was the poser probably.
Well, because you and Scott were the only two people that were allowed to be metalheads in your clique, and
that's
then you see a guy wearing. Yeah, and you see a guy wearing a Creator shirt, and like, you couldn't possibly know what that is.
Yeah, he bought that at the store. I bought it. I would have bought that shirt. I saw it at the same store, but I wouldn't fit into that shirt.
Yeah, he's wearing it ironically.
I was mad that you bought that shirt. I'm like, that guy's just like the shirt. He doesn't know what that is. That guy's a poser.
I don't know. We were still in high school, because Marty and I crossed paths in a band, so that had to be yeah, that would have been 80 in the late 80s. So when that with Dan, so we were still in school. Yeah, you came down the one time, and then that all kind of folded. Then I went and hung out with Dan over at Scott's house for a little while.
Created vocal history.
Yeah. Yeah, it was pretty epic.
Yeah.
But so no, we've known each other for
a long time.
I mean, we've been solid friends since about 97 ish. No, before that, because Jake wasn't, so it would have been 94, something like that, maybe. Yeah.
Yep, something like that.
Final thought.
All right. Final thoughts. Kellen.
Yeah, I dug it. More of this, please. Late 90s, early 2000s, technical death metal. I would absolutely add this to my collection. I'm going to go check out their next release that follows this. The Armageddon Theories. Yep. Checking that out all day long. I love this. I love this kind of stuff, this era of death metal. I really enjoyed it. And an ocean of death metal that sounds completely divorced from this. It was a welcome change of pace, and it definitely was a surprise at times, weird, interesting. But if you were to ask me like another technical death metal band that sounds like this, I couldn't do it. So interesting listen, and I will absolutely be adding this to my collection.
Cool. Jim.
Yeah, I think Kellen hit the nail on the head. I mean, when I play guitar, all my riffs are caveman because I'm not that great a guitar player. But I don't like listening to that. I like listening to things that are a little bit more interesting, and this is definitely not boring. And a lot of what's out right now that's kind of popular in the scene is the caveman riffs. But there again, I like the guys who inspired me to play like that. I don't like the newer stuff. Nothing wrong with newer bands liking that stuff. There's nothing wrong with that at all, and I'm glad death metal's strong. But it just doesn't interest me. It doesn't move me. You know what I mean? And I wouldn't say that this kind of death metal moves me. It's technical, so it's less about emotion. But for me, it's interesting, and that's powerful stuff. So, I can see myself wanting to explore, where they went from. And actually, I already did hear the latest single or whatever that came out. I went ahead and I'll check that out. And it's interesting that the new vocals are really higher pitch, more black metal sounding. But I think it's kind of cool. It was again doing something I didn't expect. I mean, that's what these guys are all about. They're not doing what you expect. So in a world of sameness, in a world of like over simplicity, it was good to kind of like go take a left turn from that. And experience something different. So yeah, these guys are a solid 8 for me.
Ben.
1 second. There's another version of this with bonus tracks.
It's got the demo tagged on.
The demo, fuck that.
Spotify has it all with the demo tracks.
Yeah, same with Apple Music or YouTube Music.
Yeah, that's okay. Well, never mind. I was wondering if there was any. It might be a hard copy to come up with, Kellen. I was hoping to maybe find one in the States for you. Yeah, Kellen, I was gonna add this to I was gonna try and like shoehorn this into our like post 2000 death metal thing, but like it just 97 is too far, right? But this is so far removed from mid 90s death metal and even maybe late 90s death metal. I think that it's worthy of separating and saying like, let's give this a little bit of attention. Final thoughts. Yeah, it's weird. I want to give it a B because I like this kind of weird shitty stuff. It's super different. Honestly, there's nothing else like this thing. Oh, I missed it. Yeah, I think we beat this horse into the ground. That we've said all there is to say about it.
All right. Well,
cool.
Tim, I think you misheard me. I ended up liking the album. I've had things to say about it, but this album won me over. Like I said, if it would have been, if I was left to my own devices and here, check this out, I would have made it halfway through the first song. Went, not for me. And the album won me over enough that if I found it in a used bin, I would happily snatch it up. Am I going to go out and hunt it down? No. And for probably the month before I filed it away, I would listen to it a bunch. But as soon as I slid it into that fucking CD rack, it'd be gone to the annals of time. It would be lost.
I honestly pull this out pretty regularly.
Yeah, it's the style. I mean, if you're into like Atheist, I would say Atheist is a lot more colorful and proggy than this is.
Right.
Middle era Pestilence, some Cynic, all the bands I'm naming typically get a lot more colorful than Theory and Practice does on this particular album. But keep in mind, this is a debut album, and typically bands have their whole life to write their first album, and a lot of people say that's their best, but sometimes it's not the case. Sometimes bands actually get better as they go instead of shooting their wad on the first one and then writing, rewriting in various different arrangements their first album to lesser effect. I think I just have the inclination that Theory and Practice are going to get better as they go, and I will check them out. Probably. I'll probably inspect. Is it going to take me away from what I'm going to pick for next week? Not at all. Not at all. Not at all. But yes, that's it. Thank you guys. Thank you, Ben, for picking this one. It was a lot of fun. It was cool to check this record out. And before I announce next week's thing, I just want to say, everybody, go check out Kellen. You'll see Kellen again on the Heavy Metallurgy channel on Monday. He did a review for Ranger's new album, Risen to the Ruin. Is that the name of it? Yes.
Risen from the Ruins, yes.
Risen from the Ruins. We're posting new reviews on Monday, the album review series. Please go check them out. They're a lot of fun. There's going to be more of them. It's going to be every Monday, maybe more, depending on flow. But yeah, go check out Kellen's review. Simon has also done one from Explosive Action. He did the Jade album, and Melanie did the Leper Colony album. So we've got 4 up. I did Misfirming. So there's 4 new reviews up. Go check them out. They're not getting much love. It'll take a little bit of time to get that coming around, but more reviews to come.
Do one, but I got to pick an album.
Yep, they'll be some other familiar faces as well. But next week, I mean, everybody, I couldn't keep this secret. Next week we are reviewing this phenomenal classic.
Bring out your capes.
Bring out your capes and your body paints. I'm gonna have to shave. I'm gonna have to do some strategic shaving for this body painting. It's gonna be glorious. But yep, Awakening the World, the debut album by Lost Horizon, another Swedish band. But God, check them out.
I'm submitting to this under duress. I've already written my disclaimer for next week, so I've got it prepared. And I'll be reading a full statement prior to beginning the broadcast, just so everyone can understand.
Poser.
Exactly what
no fate, only the power of will. There it is.
There it is.
No, there it is.
Everything you need to know.
That's all you need to know. But just keep. We'll hear how the hypocrisy swings back around, because I heard a very similar bird chirping in my ear when a cult black metal album was chosen not too long ago. That so and so, the Glorious Swordsman, ended up loving. So
listen, man, that record is as far removed from Transylvanian Hunger as
No,
Michael Jackson.
It really isn't.
Yeah,
isn't. It's not that far off the mark. There's a lot of burzum there. There really isn't. Keep talking.
Whatever.
Keep talking.
I promise I will hate this with every count of it. I will.
You're gonna love it.
You're gonna love it.
I will despise this.
So, final judgment. You can tell us now, TJ. Or you already got it.
There's nothing that sucks about this record other than the fact that it ends, and you wish there was more. That's the only thing.
Highly unlikely, but I'm a trooper for you people.
Thank you, TJ.
Thank you, TJ.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's talk about show notes one more time. Friday, we've got Matt from the Dark Path and Devin from Maze of Torment coming on and doing a What's Spinning episode. We're going to take it easy instead of having to cram for some big album discography, because that's coming. The Saxon ranking is coming, and that folks is going to kill me.
Oh my god!
I own 4 Saxon records. I like them, but there's like 57 Saxon records.
Yeah.
So
Dude.
thankfully, I'm in the caboose position where I can be like, yeah, what those guys said. Yeah, I checked this record out. I thought you guys nailed it perfectly, and I can move on to the next one. You'll hear a lot of that on that night. But
Tell them what's going on tomorrow night.
Oh, tomorrow night over on the Dark Path. Is that correct? Is it on his channel or yours? The Dark Path. Matt and Ben will be discussing the entirety of the Dodheim's Guard collection. So are you going to rank them too, or are you just talking about them?
I don't like rankings, but I don't know what Matt wants to do. We'll see.
Power metal. Jason, you and TJ need to get on. You need to get on a different page. You need to come around.
Yeah, imagine that. Marty picks the power metal record. Who'd have thunk it?
Because Marty knows what's up and he knows he's smart and stuff.
Yeah. That's
whose genius idea was this Saxon deep. Jesus fucking Christ. Darcy. Darcy picked it. That was a Darcy pick. But anyway, everybody, we love you. Thank you so much. Gentlemen, as always, it was so much fun. And we will see you all next week with a very awesome debate about how awesome Awakening the World is. And TJ,
it might be good. We'll see. It might be good.
It might be good. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, cheers. See y'all later. Take care.
Hail Satan.
Yeah.